Hey there, I'm Otaku Gaming HD, and I recently did a bit of a rewatch of Dead Rising, Watchtower, and Endgame, the two live-action films based on the Dead Rising video game series. And for enjoyability, I'll just say right off the bat, I think the first one is pretty good. I think the second one sucks. um, but you saw the thumbnail and you saw the title, and you already know that. But yeah, these were both put out by Crackle, a streaming service owned by Sony. Um, First one 2015, second in 2016. I'm a pretty decent fan of the Dead Rising games. I've played 1, 2, and 3. I never finished any of them, but I thought they were fun games. They're definitely weird, that's for sure. And I really liked the tone that they went with. Both of these movies go for a bit of a darker tone, but that seems to happen a lot of the time with video game adaptations. Just a sec, let me move the camera a bit. There. But yeah, I'm just gonna talk a bit about each of the films and what I think each of them do right and wrong. I'm not gonna go into spoilers, except for little bits of character info that I think are kind of essential for knowing what you're getting into, because quite frankly, this isn't a spoiler, but the second film is not the end to the story, and there is no third film. So I'll get into that too. But yeah, first film, Dead Rising Watchtower. I originally saw both of these on Prime because I didn't want to have to deal with Crackle and its ads, and there was really nothing else on Crackle. But yeah, I saw Jesse Metcalf was in it. I was curious to see how he would be in this kind of action horror film. And I thought Jesse Metcalf did a good job. The rest of the cast include Megan Ori, Keegan Connor Tracy, um, Virginia Madsen, who was quite nice to see. I love Virginia Madsen. Dennis Haysbert, and yeah, I I definitely think the first film gets its tone right, because the little bits of the film that go into kind of comedy. Oh yeah, Rob Riggle. That's who it is. Rob Riggle as Frank West, which I think is pretty great casting. I don't care what anybody says. But Rob Riggle has these little interludes on the news talking about a zombie survival book that he had written. And yes, some of these moments aren't as funny as others, but I think they did the character justice, and I was entertained by that. And for all of the intense stuff that happens in the normal plot, I thought the cutaways worked well to alleviate some of the tension. Second film has none of that, but I'll get to that. The first film has Chase, uh, Chase, Chase Carter, that's his name, Jesse Metcalf's character, and Keegan Connor Tracy's character Jordan, who are part of Hit Point Digital, a news outlet, like an independent news outlet, that's trying to blow the lid off how the government is treating people during this virus and all this, and how people are waiting in lines, and it's barbaric and all this. And he kind of starts out as a dick. As the film goes along, he becomes more likable, and he realizes that, yeah, exploiting this shit for news and for clicks can be a bit, you know, not a good thing. But yeah, the whole movie is him and these survivors, him, Megan Ori. He gets split apart from Jordan, but him, Megan Ori's character Crystal, I think, Virginia Madsen's character, and that they're just trying to get through this and get to an evacuation point. Dennis Haysbert's also in it. He's not in it that much, and I have a theory about his involvement with the second one, but yeah, I thought he was fine. I'm not gonna reveal anything, but The film is not like wall to. Sorry, I thought I heard a sound. Wall to wall zombie action or anything. There is a decent amount. There's a few decently well done fight scenes or action scenes. Yes, there's CGI blood. That's gonna happen with a movie that, with this obviously low of a budget. The film looks nice for the most part. It's from the director is Zach Lipovsky, who would later direct Freaks from 2018, which I think is a very underrated sci-fi horror movie. Before this, he had done Leprechaun Origins, which I haven't heard nice things about. And the most recent movie he did, which I think he co-directed with Adam Stein, was the Kim Possible movie, which I heard horrendous things about. But that's neither here nor there. The film looks decent enough. It has some pretty nice bits of cinematography. There's a nice oneer. The main action scene of the movie is a oneer that I think was partly stitched together, but it looks nice for the most part. The CG blood at times it's mixed with practical, and you can tell when it's practical and when it's CG. But the CG blood didn't bother me as much because I thought of it more as stylized, kind of comic book esque. And also, this movie didn't have the hugest budget. Neither does the sequel, but it it worked well enough. There was a mix of practical and CG gore, and it worked for the most part. The performances, Jesse Metcalf is pretty good in the lead role. I know a lot of people hate on him because he was in John Tucker Must Die, and they're like, "Oh, he's not a big star," and he was in Desperate Housewives. Like, okay, people can be in something like that and be in shit later that they're good in. But I and I did want to make a prediction. I predict that Jesse Metcalf's gonna like pop up later in like an A24 movie and get a bunch of praise, but maybe it's just a joke of mine. But Megan Ori's all right. I understood what they were trying to do with her character. She was fine. Virginia Madsen was great. She really was. She's like a mother who ended up having to kill her own daughter because her daughter was turning into a zombie because the Zombrex that was given to her didn't work, and she played the trauma very well. And I thought the end to her character arc like really worked emotionally. I actually was surprised that there was this good of acting from a character in a movie like this. Dennis Haysbert is kind of meh. Uh, and Keegan Connor Tracy was good. She showed some pretty good emotions as well. When I first saw this movie, I didn't know too much about her. I just knew that I had seen her on like Supernatural or something. And I always thought when I first saw this, I was like, oh, she's cute. Probably around like 20, 23, 24 ish. Come to find out later that she was like not even 44, but around 44. I think she's about 50 now, but she looks great. That's for sure. Um, but yeah, she did good. The film is 2 hours long, which to some people, I've heard some people say that it feels like it. I didn't feel that it was at all. But I thought it moved along at a good enough pace, even though it's not like focused on zombie action the entire time. It's more focused on the characters, which I liked. I thought that was an interesting approach. But yeah, in the object of making it a Dead Rising movie, I thought they did that pretty well. They didn't hold on to just making a straight adaptation of the games, but they took plenty of inspirations from the game, such as the psychopaths that you have to fight. They end up being chased by this bike gang full of psychopaths, kind of like in Dead Rising 3. One of the few things I remember about Dead Rising 3, the little bit I played. They build weapons that actually looked pretty cool and were weapons that you could have made in the second game, I think. Maybe third. Um, there's a Frank West statue in the pawn shop that they're in. Uh, but yeah, like they had enough references to the games, and the story was enough like the games that I thought they did a good enough job. And I think this is definitely one of the better game adaptations, along with Tomb Raider, Lara Croft Tomb Raider 1 and 2 with Angelina Jolie, the first one in Cradle of Life. I know quite a few people don't like Cradle of Life, but I think both of those are quite underrated. Hitman, um, and Silent Hill, I think it's up there with those. But yeah, not much I can say bad about the first movie. The only real issue I have with it is that I wish it was kind of its own contained story, but it relied on having to have a sequel to fill in the gaps, which the sequel really doesn't. It kind of goes on to its own story for the most part. But I will say this isn't really a spoiler. It's kind of in in line with having to have the sequel. But Jordan ends up getting captured by the general, and and she ends up like Chase ends up having to go after her in the sequel, but because she was trying to expose what was going on uh, with the whole Zombrex thing. But in order to talk about Dead Rising Endgame, I'm going to there, well, there, and there. Perfect. Perfect lighting to talk about this waste of a sequel. So the first movie was directed by someone who I actually have faith in to direct something. Sequel is directed by Pat Williams, who I have not seen anything he has done, but you can tell that this is directed by someone who directs TV, because he directs the show Continuum. I never watched it. I know there's plenty of people who love it, but this movie looks like a fucking TV show. The opening credits and the ending credits and every other bit where there's text on the screen are done in impact font, and it looks really cheap. Like the title card for Dead Rising Watchtower at least looked all right. It looked like the video game, but this no. This sequel has barely anything to do with the first movie or any of the video games. Um, Megan Ori's character gets completely thrown out the window. There's no other mentions to her. It's just like, oh, fuck this bitch. We got a new bitch here. And it's Chase's girlfriend. This movie skips 2 years in the future. I hate when sequels do this. You are immediately shooting yourself in the foot, because at the end of the first one, it was like, oh, what's Chase gonna do next? He might be in danger. Like, the general's gonna try to hunt him down or something. So the sequel's 2 years later. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It feels so hackneyed. It feels like such hackneyed writing took place, and it feels so fucking lazy. I didn't look if it was the same writers as the first movie. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed, but it just feels so cheap. This sequel, like, there might be I don't even know if there's more action. This barely feels like a zombie movie, even, let alone a Dead Rising movie. Um, like, Chase is trying to expose this human trafficking ring now. Like, it feels like a random other conspiracy thriller with a couple zombies added in. Kind of like how They Slash Them was basically a horribly done psychological thriller with kill scenes thrown in so that they can market it to the slasher crowd so that anybody would see it. In this case, it feels like a random conspiracy thriller with zombies thrown in. It feels really cheap and really terribly made. Um, but yeah, like his new girl, Chase's new girlfriend, his girlfriend is like a hacker, I like the actress all right, Marie Avgeropoulos. I don't know if I said that right, but I liked her in Tracers with Taylor Lautner, like the only good Taylor Lautner movie I thought. But like, yeah, she's kind of just there to be like, Chase, you can't go after this. They'll kill you. You're too crazy. Which, very great character you wrote for her. But yeah, the sequel just it barely feels like a zombie movie. The zombie makeup that's there. The first movie had some pretty damn decent zombie makeup, and like there was some nice kills, like varied ways of killing them, like in the games. In this movie, basically every zombie kill is either they get shot or they get sliced. Um, and it's usually not even cutting their head off, which I'm pretty sure the way to kill a zombie is to destroy the head, thus headshots. But who the fuck do I know? What the fuck do I know? This movie, even though it's shorter, this movie's an hour and 36 minutes. The first one was 2 hours. This feels longer, and not in a good way. Um, but yeah, they're just trying to go through these tunnels, find Jordan, Chase's camera woman. She doesn't show up until like 30 minutes from the end of the movie, and then they go on to this place to like stop these chips from being deployed that people have that have Zombrex in them, and they can be throttled all at once to kill everybody to supposedly end the zombie outbreak. But yeah, there's not much I can say about the sequel. I honestly do not ever that it, this pisses me off too because I like the first movie enough that I would want to watch it again, but I hate the feeling of, oh, there's a sequel and I keep forgetting that the sequel ends without like an actual ending to everything. Like it gives what is technically an ending to the story of the sequel. It doesn't really uh there's no real ending to the main villain. There's no ending to the story about the virus. I know there's most zombie movies kind of do that, and it pisses me off. Like it's almost like people will get mad if there's a happy ending to a zombie movie. Just end the fucking movie. That's your job. That's why I can't stand people like David Cronenberg, David Lynch, and all these people that get called artists for ending their films without actually ending them, or it's like, oh, please interpret the ending, like in fucking Videodrome, where it's like, oh, he's going on to like a final boss thing after all this, like it's finally getting interesting, and then he shoots himself in the head, and then the fucking movie's over. Like, it's that kind of ending to me, and it just pisses me off because I wish the first movie had a, I wish Dead Rising Watchtower had an ending, like more than just the cliffhanger ending for Endgame to come up. And why is it even called Endgame? The first movie is called Watchtower because that's the name of the operation. The chips are being implanted into people for with Zombrex, and it's called Watchtower because the government is able to watch these people who have been chipped, and if at any time you were going to like rebel against them or anything, they could knock down your door and just fucking kill you, and they can shut you down at any time with the surge of the Zombrex, or like overdosing you basically. Why the fuck is the sequel called Endgame? Why is it not called like something else integral to the story? Because there is the project with the Phenotrans shit. Like it would make more sense if you called it like Dead Rising Phenotrans, but like whatever. Not much I can say on the sequel. If I had to give any recommendation, I guess watch the first movie on its own. But the problem is there's the sequel. I'd say the first movie is worth watching and worth suffering through the sequel to get some kind of closure. But I think most people will be kind of disappointed in how it ends. And I saw a lot of people online. Both of these movies have very low ratings. Dead Rising Watchtower has a 2.3 on Letterboxd. Endgame has a 2.1. I definitely think Endgame is way worse. Quality wise, acting wise, um, zombie wise, violence wise. It's just like it just feels haphazardly made. It feels like they went too over budget with the first Dead Rising movie, and they were like, you know what, we went over budget. It's Crackle. There's nobody's paying anything. It's ad supported, so we have to lower the budget. And I have a theory on why Billy Zane and Dennis Haysbert are in the sequel, because it feels like Dennis Haysbert didn't want to come back. He seems very bored most of the time. He's very wooden in his line delivery, and in the first one he wasn't that bad. But Billy Zane and Dennis Haysbert were in a few of the entries in the Sniper series, a series that I actually like. I think most of those movies are definitely worth watching. The only one I really wasn't too keen on was Sniper Reloaded, mostly because it felt horribly shot and it was just really bad. But then that same director, Claudio Fay, would come back to do Sniper Ultimate Kill, which is my favorite of the series. And I know many people would disagree with me. They say the first one's the only one where even worth watching. But I definitely do think that Ultimate Kill like stepped it up and was like, oh, we got violent kills, we've got point of view shots from the sniper, whatever. Billy Zane and Dennis Haysbert were in Sniper Ghost Shooter, which came out the same year as Dead Rising Endgame. So my theory is they were being shot around the same time, and because I guess they're friends or something, they were in the film for a bit. But yeah, not much else I can say. I think the first movie is great. I think the second movie is bad. And I hope this was an interesting video. Again, first time I've done this, where I compare two movies. But yeah, I didn't want to make two separate videos. I kind of wanted to rant on the second one while comparing it to the first one. But yeah, I hope that if people are interested, they'll go watch the movies. They're both on Tubi, or Crackle still, maybe. But you can watch them on Tubi. And if anybody has any requests for movies that they want me to review or talk about, or any kind of requests for videos, like, hit me up in the comments, and hope to see y'all soon.